Poor little girl gives her late father's shoes to a millionaire in disguise. The millionaire's response changed everything. Before we begin, tell me something about where you live. What's the weather like today? The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Boston's busy streets as 9-year-old Riley Morgan walked hand in hand with her mother, Melissa. They had just left the public library, Riley clutching a borrowed book on robotics to her chest, her observant hazel eyes taking in every detail of the world around her. "Mom, look," Riley whispered, tugging gently at her mother's sleeve. "He's still there, the third day in a row." Melissa followed her daughter's gaze to the Washington Avenue underpass, where an elderly man sat huddled against the concrete wall. His clothes were worn but clean, his silver hair peeking out from beneath, a faded cap. Something about his dignified posture despite his circumstances made him stand out from the usual homeless people they encountered. "I know, sweetie," Melissa sighed, adjusting her nurse's badge that hung around her neck. The dark circles under her eyes betrayed the double shift she had just completed at Boston Memorial Hospital. "Some people don't have anywhere else to go." "But it's getting colder," Riley persisted, her young face etched with genuine concern. "And his shoes are all torn up." Melissa tried to gently guide her daughter forward. "Riley, we need to get home. I have to prepare dinner before my night shift starts." But Riley remained rooted to the spot, her eyes never leaving the old man. "Dad always said we should help people when we can," she said quietly. The mention of Thomas sent a familiar pang through Melissa's heart. 1 year had passed since the construction accident that took her husband's life, yet the grief still felt fresh some days. She squeezed Riley's hand. "Your father was a good man. Come on now, we need to go." The small apartment they called home was only a few blocks away, nestled in a modest neighborhood that had once felt spacious enough for their family of 3. Now, with Thomas gone, it sometimes felt both too empty and too full of memories as, soon as they arrived, Riley disappeared into her room while Melissa began preparing a simple pasta dinner. The sounds of cabinets opening and closing came from down the hall, followed by Riley's small footsteps. "Mom," Riley called, standing in the kitchen doorway. "Do you think Dad's shoes would fit that man?" Melissa turned to find her daughter holding a pair of well-preserved work boots, Thomas's boots, the ones he wasn't wearing on the day of the accident. Melissa had kept all his belongings, unable to part with anything that reminded her of him. "Riley," Melissa began, her voice catching. "Dad doesn't need them anymore," Riley said softly, running her small fingers reverently over the leather. "And he has perfect shoes in heaven now, right? But that man's feet must be so cold." Melissa knelt down to her daughter's level, taking in the determined set of Riley's jaw, so like her father's, and the compassion shining in her eyes. "Those shoes are special to us, honey. They're one of the few things we have left of Dad." Riley nodded solemnly. "That's why we should give them away. Dad always said the most special things are meant to be shared." She hugged the boots to her chest. "Please, Mom. I've been watching that man for 3 whole days. He never asks anyone for anything, not like the other people who hold up signs." Melissa felt tears threatening to spill. In that moment, her daughter seemed so much older than her 9 years, carrying Thomas's generous spirit within her small frame. "Let me think about it," Melissa finally said, turning back to the stove to hide her emotions. That night, after tucking Riley into bed, Melissa sat alone in the living room. She picked up a framed photo of Thomas, his kind eyes smiling back at her, his arm wrapped protectively around a younger Riley. What would he do in this situation? The answer came easily. Thomas had always led with his heart. In the morning, Melissa found Riley carefully wrapping the boots in newspaper. "We'll go after school tomorrow," Melissa said softly. "We'll give him Dad's shoes together." Riley's face lit up with a smile so bright it momentarily chased away the shadows that had lingered in their home for the past year. As Melissa helped her daughter prepare the precious package, she couldn't possibly know how this simple act of kindness was about to change their lives forever. The following afternoon, Riley practically flew out of school, her heart pounding with anticipation. Melissa was waiting outside, looking tired after her morning shift but smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. "Did you bring them?" Riley asked immediately, her eyes wide with hope. Melissa nodded, patting her tote bag where the newspaper-wrapped shoes rested. "I did. Are you sure about this, sweetie?" "More sure than anything," Riley replied with the unwavering certainty that only children possess. They walked toward Washington Avenue, Riley skipping ahead and then waiting impatiently for her mother to catch up. As they approached the underpass, Riley slowed, suddenly nervous. The elderly man was still there, sitting in almost the exact same position as the previous days. What Riley and Melissa couldn't know was that beneath the layers of carefully crafted grime and weathered clothing sat Ethan Blackwood, founder and CEO of Blackwood Technologies. Worth billions, Ethan had developed a habit of disguising himself once a week to conduct what he called his social experiments, attempts to understand the world without the distortion that his wealth typically created around him. Today was day 3 of his latest experiment, and he had been about to pack up and return to his penthouse when he spotted the little girl and her mother approaching. Riley stepped forward, clutching the package while Melissa hung back, giving her daughter space, but staying protectively close. "Excuse me, sir?" Riley's voice was soft but clear. Ethan looked up, maintaining his character. "Yes, young lady?" "I noticed you've been here for 3 days," Riley said, her voice gaining confidence. "And your shoes." She glanced down at the tattered footwear he wore as part of his disguise. Ethan followed her gaze, genuinely surprised by the child's observation. Most people walked past without a second glance. "These were my dad's," Riley continued, unwrapping the newspaper to reveal the well-maintained work boots. "But he's in heaven now, and I think you need them more than we do." For a moment, Ethan broke character, stunned by the unexpected gesture. This wasn't how his social experiments usually went. People occasionally offered spare change or leftover food, but never something so personal. "I couldn't possibly," he began. "Please," Riley insisted, her eyes earnest. "Dad always said everyone deserves warm feet, and these are really good shoes. He took special care of them." Melissa stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on Riley's shoulder. "It would mean a lot to us," she added softly. Ethan looked from mother to daughter, suddenly aware of something genuine that had been missing from his life of board meetings and investment portfolios. Behind his disguise, his eyes filled with tears that weren't part of any act. "Thank you," he managed to say, accepting the boots with hands that trembled slightly. "This is very kind." Riley beamed, her mission accomplished. "They might be a little big, but Dad said it's better to have extra room than not enough." As Melissa gently led Riley away, Ethan remained frozen, the newspaper-wrapped boots in his lap. He watched their retreating figures, the tired nurse and the compassionate child, with an expression that had transformed from his calculated, homeless man demeanor to something his executive team would never recognize: raw emotion. For the first time in years, Ethan Blackwood felt something shift inside him, something that all his wealth had never been able to purchase. And as coincidence would have it, his company had just acquired Boston Memorial Hospital, the very place where Melissa's nurse badge indicated she worked. As part of a diversification strategy, Ethan carefully placed the boots beside him, pulled out a disposable phone and made a call. "Charlotte," he said to his assistant, his voice no longer matching his disheveled appearance. "I need you to find information on someone, a nurse at Boston Memorial, and her daughter." Little did Riley know that her simple act of kindness was about to set extraordinary events in motion. The gleaming Blackwood Technologies headquarters towered over downtown Boston, its glass exterior reflecting the late afternoon sun. On the 52nd floor, Ethan Blackwood stepped out of his private elevator, the transformation from homeless man to billionaire CEO complete. "You're back earlier than usual," remarked Charlotte Davis, his executive assistant of 8 years. She was arranging documents on his immaculate desk, her efficiency as polished as the marble floors beneath them. Ethan placed Thomas Morgan's work boots carefully on a side table. "Something came up," he said simply, removing the final touches of his disguise, the specialized makeup that had added years to his face and the custom contact lenses that changed his eye color. Charlotte paused, studying her boss. After nearly a decade working together, she could read his moods better than anyone. "You seem different today. Did something happen during your experiment?" Ethan walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city below. Somewhere, out there, Riley and her mother were going about their evening, unaware that they had just encountered one of the wealthiest men in the country. "I met someone," he said quietly. "A little girl, 9 years old, maybe 10. She gave me these." He nodded toward the boots. "They belonged to her father, who apparently passed away. She said I needed them more than she did." Charlotte's professional demeanor softened slightly. "That's unusually kind." "Yes," Ethan agreed, his voice thoughtful. "When was the last time someone offered me something without wanting anything in return, Charlotte? Something of actual personal value to them?" "I can't recall," she admitted. Ethan turned from the window. "The mother works at Boston Memorial. She's a nurse, Melissa Morgan, the hospital we just acquired last month." Understanding dawned on Charlotte's face. She had overseen the acquisition paperwork herself. "What would you like me to do?" "Everything," Ethan said, moving to his desk. "I want to know everything about them. Where they live, their financial situation, the daughter's school, how the father died." He paused, gazing at a framed photograph on his desk. A beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "And I want it handled with absolute discretion." Charlotte nodded, making notes on her tablet. "And your motive is?" It was a bold question, but one of the reasons Ethan valued Charlotte was her willingness to challenge him when necessary. "I'm not entirely sure yet," he admitted, surprising both of them with his honesty. "But that little girl saw me when no one else did. For 3 days she noticed me sitting there, and then she gave me something irreplaceable." Charlotte glanced at the pile of acquisition reports awaiting his signature. "The board meeting is in 30 minutes. They're expecting updates on the hospital integration plan." "Perfect timing," Ethan said, a plan forming in his analytical mind. "Have legal draw up documents for an educational scholarship program for children of hospital employees. Make it comprehensive. Tuition, books, uniforms, everything." "For all employees?" Charlotte asked, eyebrows raised. "No," Ethan replied, picking up Thomas's boots again. "We'll start with just one, a pilot program." After Charlotte left to prepare for the board meeting, Ethan remained alone in his office. He placed the boots carefully beside the photograph of his late wife, Jessica. 2 years had passed since cancer took her, yet her absence still left an emptiness that all his wealth couldn't fill. "You would have loved this little girl, Jess," he whispered to the photograph. "She has your heart." Ethan opened his desk drawer and removed a small camera. He'd discreetly taken a photo of Riley and Melissa as they walked away from the underpass. Looking at their retreating figures, the weary mother and the determined daughter, Ethan felt a certainty he hadn't experienced since Jessica's death. He wasn't sure exactly what form it would take, but somehow he would ensure that Riley Morgan's simple act of kindness would be repaid 1,000-fold. 1 week later, Melissa Morgan stared at the note in her hand with confusion. She had been summoned to the office of Boston Memorial's new director, an unusual request for a floor nurse, even one with her experience. "Any idea what this is about?" asked Dana, her colleague at the nurses' station. Melissa shook her head. "None. Ever since the acquisition, everything's been changing so fast." "Well, don't keep the bigwigs waiting," Dana said with an encouraging smile. "Maybe it's a promotion." Melissa laughed, but the sound held little humor. Promotions required time and additional training. Luxuries a single mother couldn't afford, no matter how welcome the extra income would be. She made her way to the executive floor, an area she rarely visited. The receptionist directed her to a large corner office with a nameplate that read, E. Blackwood, Interim Director. Blackwood, as in Blackwood Technologies? Melissa smoothed her scrubs nervously before knocking. "Come in," called a deep voice. The man who rose from behind the desk to greet her wasn't what Melissa had expected. Ethan Blackwood looked younger in person than in the business magazine photos, with an intensity in his eyes that the cameras hadn't captured. Mrs. Morgan, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. His voice was warm, but something about it tickled a distant memory that Melissa couldn't quite place. It's Ms. She corrected automatically. But Melissa is fine. Melissa, he nodded, returning to his seat. I'll get straight to the point. We're implementing a new program for exceptional employees, particularly those with children. Your personnel file indicates you have a daughter. Riley, Melissa confirmed, caution in her voice. She's 9. Ethan smiled, sliding a folder across the desk. We're establishing a scholarship fund for children of outstanding staff members. Riley would receive a full academic scholarship to Westbrook Academy, one of the finest schools in Boston. Melissa stared at him, speechless. Westbrook was beyond prestigious, beyond anything she could ever afford on a nurse's salary. Additionally, Ethan continued, we'd like to offer you a promotion to nursing coordinator for the pediatric wing, with a corresponding salary increase. He named a figure that was triple her current earnings. Melissa's heart pounded. This couldn't be real. Why me? She finally managed. There are hundreds of nurses at Boston Memorial with children. We're piloting the program, Ethan explained smoothly. Your personnel file shows exemplary service, perfect attendance despite often taking double shifts, and outstanding patient care ratings. Melissa studied his face, looking for the catch. With all due respect, Mr. Blackwood, this seems extraordinary for a pilot program. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Approval, perhaps. I believe in investing in potential, Ms. Morgan. Both yours and your daughter's. Did my sister-in-law put you up to this? Melissa asked suddenly. Patricia has friends in high places. If this is some kind of test, I assure you this is a legitimate offer. Ethan interrupted, his expression serious. No strings attached. Take some time to think about it. The scholarship package includes all materials, uniforms, and transportation. Riley could start next week. Melissa clutched her hands in her lap to stop them from trembling. This opportunity could change Riley's life, give her access to resources and education that Thomas had always dreamed of for their daughter. May I? She asked, reaching for the folder. Of course, Ethan replied. Review everything carefully. My assistant Charlotte will contact you tomorrow for your decision. As Melissa left the office, her mind reeled with possibilities and questions. In the elevator, she pulled out her phone and dialed Patricia's number. Her relationship with Thomas's sister had been strained since his death, but Patricia was the only family they had left. A billionaire is personally offering Riley a scholarship? Patricia's voice dripped with suspicion. What does he want in return? He says nothing, Melissa replied, stepping out of the elevator. It's a company program. And you believe that? Patricia scoffed. Men like Blackwood don't give handouts without expecting something, Melissa. Thomas is barely cold in his grave. And you're already— Don't, Melissa cut her off sharply. Don't you dare make this about anything other than Riley's future. As she ended the call, Melissa caught her reflection in a hospital window. Tired eyes, hair hastily pulled back, scrubs that had seen too many washes. Then she pictured Riley, brilliant and observant, limited only by the opportunities Melissa could provide. Whatever Ethan Blackwood's true motives were, the chance to secure Riley's education was too important to dismiss out of hand. Mom, they have a robotics lab. Riley's eyes shone with wonder as she explored Westbrook Academy's science wing, and the library has more books than the public one. Melissa watched her daughter flit from display to display during the school tour, Riley's excitement palpable. After much consideration and another sleepless night, Melissa had accepted Ethan Blackwood's offer. Now, just 3 days later, they were being shown around what would soon be Riley's new school. Each student receives a personal tablet for assignments, explained Ms. Winters, the admissions director, and our student-to-teacher ratio is 8-to-1. Melissa nodded, still struggling to believe this was real. Everything about Westbrook screamed exclusivity, from the manicured grounds to the state-of-the-art facilities. Children of senators and CEOs attended this school, not the daughters of single nurses. Riley would start on Monday, Ms. Winters continued. Her uniform will be ready by then, and all supplies are provided through the Blackwood Scholarship. Mr. Blackwood seems very generous, Melissa remarked carefully. Ms. Winters beamed. Oh, he's revolutionizing everything since the endowment. The scholarship program was his personal initiative. Your daughter is quite fortunate to be selected. Later, that afternoon, Melissa sat at their small kitchen table reviewing apartment listings closer to Westbrook. With her new salary, they could afford a better place, one where Riley wouldn't have to share a bedroom with storage boxes. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. When she opened the door, Patricia stood there, arms crossed and expression stormy. So, you're really going through with this? She demanded, brushing past Melissa into the apartment. Riley's leaving her school? You're moving? All because some rich man snapped his fingers? Melissa sighed. Hello to you too, Patricia. This isn't like you, Melissa. Patricia continued, pacing the small living room. You've always been so careful, so independent. Now suddenly you're accepting handouts from a stranger? It's not a handout. It's a scholarship and a promotion I've earned, Melissa countered, keeping her voice low so Riley, playing in her room, wouldn't hear. This is a chance for Riley to have opportunities Thomas and I always dreamed of giving her. Patricia's expression softened slightly at her brother's name, then hardened again. Thomas would want you to be cautious. Men like Blackwood have agendas. What exactly are you implying? I'm saying, Patricia hissed, that my brother is barely cold in his grave and you're already accepting expensive favors from another man. How do you think that looks? The accusation stung like a slap. Get out, Melissa whispered, trembling with anger. You're not thinking clearly. I said get out. Riley appeared in the hallway, eyes wide with concern. Mom, is everything okay? Patricia forced a smile. Just a grown-up discussion, sweetie. I was just leaving. She shot Melissa a final warning look before heading to the door. Think about what I said. There's always a price. After Patricia left, Melissa found Riley sitting on her bed, hugging her favorite stuffed elephant, a gift from Thomas on her 7th birthday. Why was Aunt Patricia mad? Riley asked quietly. Melissa sat beside her daughter, gathering her thoughts. She's worried about the changes happening. Sometimes adults get scared of new things. Because of the new school? Or because of Mr. Blackwood helping us? Sometimes Melissa forgot how perceptive Riley was. Both, I think. Riley considered this, her young face solemn. Mr. Blackwood is just being nice, Mom. Maybe he doesn't have anyone to be nice to. She hugged her elephant tighter. Dad always said we're good people who deserve good things. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Her daughter's wisdom constantly amazed her. When did you get so smart? Riley smiled. I read a lot of books. Later that night, after tucking Riley in, Melissa checked her email. Among work messages was one from Charlotte Davis, Ethan's assistant, confirming details of her promotion and attaching apartment listings pre-approved for the relocation allowance. Everything was moving so quickly. The rational part of Melissa, the careful planner who'd survived Thomas's death and kept their little family afloat, warned her to proceed with caution. But seeing Riley's face light up at Westbrook, imagining her daughter's potential flourishing in that environment, her computer pinged with a new message notification from E. Blackwood. Subject, Riley's Robotics Club Ems. Morgan, I've been informed. Riley expressed interest in our robotics program during her tour. I've taken the liberty of enrolling her in the club, which meets Tuesdays after school. Transportation home is provided. The instructor mentioned they're building autonomous vehicles this semester, a project I think she'll excel at given her obvious intelligence. Regards, Ethan Blackwood. Melissa stared at the screen. How did he know? About Riley's interest? Had he been monitoring their tour? And why was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation personally involved in something as minor as a child's after-school activities? Patricia's warning echoed in her mind. There's always a price. 3 weeks had passed since Riley started at Westbrook Academy. The morning routine in the Morgans' new apartment was a world away from their previous life. The spacious 2-bedroom, Unit in a well-maintained building was just 15 minutes from the school and featured amenities they'd never had before. A doorman, in-unit laundry, and a small balcony overlooking a park. "Mom, have you seen my tablet charger?" Riley called from her bedroom, her very own bedroom decorated with space-themed wallpaper and a proper desk for homework. "Check your backpack's side pocket," Melissa replied while preparing breakfast. She had adjusted to her new position as nursing coordinator, though the additional responsibilities sometimes left her exhausted. Still, being able to work regular hours instead of back-to-back shifts was a welcome change. Riley emerged from her room in her Westbrook uniform, a pleated navy skirt, white blouse, and navy cardigan with the school emblem. "Found it, Mr. Chen. Wants our robot design submitted before class today." Melissa smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. Riley had flourished at Westbrook, particularly in the robotics club, where her creativity and problem-solving abilities had already caught her teacher's attention. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. Melissa checked her watch, frowning. It was only 7:30 a.m. When she opened the door, the sight of two people in professional attire, a man and a woman, sent a chill through her. Their formal demeanor and clipboards instantly triggered her nurse's intuition that something was wrong. "Melissa Morgan?" the woman asked. "I'm Sarah Donovan from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, James Walsh. We need to speak with you regarding a complaint that's been filed." Melissa's heart dropped. "Complaint? What complaint?" "Mom, who is it?" Riley appeared beside her, backpack in hand. Melissa instinctively placed a protective arm around Riley's shoulders. "Sweetie, go finish your breakfast. I need to talk with these people for a minute." Once Riley was back in the kitchen, Melissa stepped into the hallway, partially closing the door behind her. "What is this about?" she demanded in a low voice. "We've received an allegation about improper influence and possible exploitation," James explained calmly. "Specifically regarding your relationship with Ethan Blackwood and how it might be affecting your daughter." The accusation hit Melissa like a physical blow. "That's absurd. Who would—" The answer came immediately. "Patricia. My sister-in-law filed this, didn't she?" The CPS workers exchanged glances but didn't confirm or deny. "We need to conduct a home assessment and interview both you and Riley," Sarah said. "It's standard procedure when concerns are raised about a child's welfare." "Concerns?" Melissa struggled to keep her voice down. "The only concern is that my daughter is finally getting opportunities she deserves. She has her own room, goes to a great school, and isn't alone all evening while I work doubles to keep a roof over our heads." James raised a placating hand. "We're not making any judgments, Ms. Morgan. We're just following up on the report. May we come in?" Reluctantly, Melissa let them into the apartment. As they observed Riley calmly eating breakfast and checked each room of the spotless apartment, their initial tension visibly eased. "Riley, these people would like to ask you a few questions," Melissa explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "About school and our new home." Riley regarded the visitors with curiosity rather than fear. "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all," Sarah assured her with a warm smile. "We just want to make sure you're happy and doing well." As the interview progressed, it became clear that the CPS workers were finding nothing to substantiate Patricia's claims. Riley spoke enthusiastically about her robotics projects, her new friends, and how she didn't miss her mom working night shifts anymore. After they left, promising to file their report promptly, Melissa called the school to explain that Riley would be late. Then she sank onto the couch, shaking with a mixture of relief and fury. Her phone rang. Ethan Blackwood's name appeared on the screen. "Ms. Morgan, I've just been informed about the CPS visit," he said without preamble. "I want to assure you that my legal team is ready to assist if needed." "How did you even know?" Melissa asked, too drained to be surprised by his awareness. "The building's security protocol alerts management about official visitors," he explained. "Are you and Riley all right?" "We're fine. It was my sister-in-law's doing. She's convinced there's something inappropriate about your help." There was a pause before Ethan responded. "I understand her concern. Perhaps it's time we discussed my motivations more transparently. Would you be available to meet at my office tomorrow? Melissa closed her eyes, remembering Patricia's accusations and the humiliation of the CPS visit. Maybe. Maybe we should just stop all this. The scholarship, the job, the apartment, it's causing more problems than I anticipated. Please. Ethan's voice had lost its usual businesslike tone. One meeting before you decide. There's something you should know. In her bedroom, Riley sat with her ear pressed against the door, listening to her mother's conversation. She hadn't understood everything the visitors were asking, but she'd gathered enough to know that her Aunt Patricia was trying to take away all their new opportunities. Riley slipped away from the door and pulled out her tablet. Instead of completing her robot design, she opened a new document and began typing, her young face set with determination. If adults wouldn't fix this mess, maybe she would have to do it herself. The following afternoon, Melissa sat in Ethan Blackwood's office 48 floors above Boston. The panoramic view might have been breathtaking if her mind wasn't consumed with worry about the meeting ahead. Thank you for coming, Ethan said, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something more hesitant. Would you like coffee? Tea? No, thank you, Melissa replied. You said there was something I should know. Ethan nodded, moving to sit not behind his imposing desk, but in the chair beside hers. I haven't been entirely forthcoming about why I singled out you and Riley for the scholarship program. Melissa tensed. I'm listening. 3 weeks ago, he began, I was conducting what I call a social experiment. Once a month I spend 3 days in various parts of the city, disguised. Recognition dawned slowly on Melissa's face. The underpass, she whispered. The homeless man. That was you? Ethan nodded. I've been doing these experiments for years, trying to understand perspectives my wealth usually shields me from. Most people walk past without a second glance, but Riley, his voice softened. Riley noticed me 3 days in a row, and then she gave me her father's shoes. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Thomas's boots. Your daughter gave me more than shoes that day, Ethan continued, rising to walk to his desk. He picked up a silver-framed photograph and handed it to Melissa. This is my wife, Jessica. The photo showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, sitting on a hospital bed surrounded by children, clearly patients. Jessica was a pediatric oncologist, Ethan explained. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer, the very disease she dedicated her life to fighting. His voice tightened momentarily. Before she died, we planned to establish a foundation for children. It was her dream, especially for kids from single-parent households like she had been. Melissa studied the photograph, beginning to understand. And Riley reminded you of that dream, when a 9-year-old girl offers a stranger her dead father's shoes because everyone deserves warm feet. Ethan shook his head, emotion evident in his usually composed features. It was the most genuine act of kindness I've witnessed in years. The scholarship program existed only on paper until that day. Riley made it real. Melissa handed the photograph back, her thoughts churning. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Would you have believed me? Ethan asked. Or would you have thought I was manipulating you with a convenient story? Before Melissa could respond, Charlotte knocked and entered the office. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Patricia Morgan is in the lobby demanding to see you. She's threatening to call the press about exploitation of her family. Ethan sighed. Send security to escort her up. Might as well address this directly. Melissa groaned. I'm so sorry about her. Since Thomas died, she's been difficult. You have nothing to apologize for, Ethan assured her. But you should know she's been investigating me. My security team flagged multiple searches for information about my personal life, particularly regarding Jessica. Melissa's eyes widened. What is she hoping to find? I imagine she's looking for scandal, Ethan replied. Something to prove. Her suspicions about my motives correct. The door opened again and Patricia burst in, her face flushed with indignation. She stopped short at the sight of Melissa. Of course you're here, Patricia spat. Cozying up to your benefactor while Riley is where? Home alone? Riley is at her robotics club, Melissa replied evenly. The one that's helping her build the future Dad always wanted for her. Patricia's attention shifted to Ethan. I know men like you. You don't give something for nothing. What do you really want from my sister-in-law and niece? Ethan met her, gaze without flinching. Mrs. Morgan, I understand your concern for your family, but I can assure you— Save it, Patricia interrupted. I found out about your wife. Using a child to replace what you lost is sick. The accusation hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Melissa gasped, but Ethan remained calm. You're right about one thing, he said quietly. This is about Jessica in a way, but not as you imagine. He walked to the window, looking out at the city. My wife's dying wish was to help children reach their potential. Riley's compassion reminded me of that promise. Nothing more, nothing less. Patricia wavered slightly, thrown by his candor. The question, Ethan continued, turning back to face them, is not what I want from your family, but what you want for Riley. Riley sat alone at lunch, picking at her food while watching the other students from the corner of the cafeteria. Despite Westbrook's welcoming environment, she'd begun withdrawing from her new friends over the past few days. The CPS visit and her mother's worried phone calls with Aunt Patricia had planted seeds of doubt in her mind. Mind if I join you? Asked Zoe, a classmate from robotics club. Riley shrugged, which Zoe took as permission to sit down. You've been really quiet lately, Zoe observed, opening her lunch container. Is everything okay? Fine, Riley mumbled, pushing her salad around with her fork. Your robot design was the best in class yesterday, Zoe continued, undeterred by Riley's lack of enthusiasm. Mr. Chen said your navigation system was innovative. Under normal circumstances, this praise would have thrilled Riley. Today, it only deepened her confusion. Do you think people can be nice just to be nice? Riley asked suddenly. Or do they always want something? Zoe considered the question with surprising seriousness for a 9-year-old. My mom says people usually have reasons for what they do, but that doesn't mean the reasons are bad. Riley nodded thoughtfully. Last night she'd overheard her mother on the phone, explaining to someone how Mr. Blackwood had been the homeless man they'd given her father's shoes to. The revelation had shocked her. Why would a billionaire pretend to be homeless? Was everything, the school, their new home, her mother's job, just because she'd given him those shoes? I think I made a mistake, Riley confessed. And now everyone's fighting because of me. Zoe looked confused, but before she could respond, the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. In science class that afternoon, Mr. Chen announced their assignment. Today, we'll be writing about our personal heroes. Think about someone you admire, someone who inspires you to be your best self. Riley stared at her blank tablet screen, paralyzed by indecision. Last year, she would have written about her father without hesitation. Thomas Morgan had been her undisputed hero, with his kind heart and unwavering belief in helping others. But now, her thoughts drifted to her mother, who had held their family together through grief and hardship. Then to Mr. Blackwood, whose generosity had transformed their lives, though his motives now seemed complicated. As other students typed busily around her, Riley felt tears welling in her eyes. Riley? Mr. Chen approached her desk. Is everything all right? I can't decide, she whispered, embarrassed by the tremor in her voice. Can't decide what? Her teacher asked gently. Who my hero is. A tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. It used to be easy. Mr. Chen knelt beside her desk. Sometimes the hardest questions don't have simple answers. Would you like to take a short break? Maybe get some water? Riley nodded gratefully and slipped out of the classroom. In the empty hallway, she leaned against the wall, trying to sort through her tangled thoughts. The pristine corridor with its gleaming floors and inspirational quotes from famous scientists felt suddenly foreign, as if she didn't belong there, after all. Her thoughts were interrupted by a commotion at the end of the hallway. A group of adults in formal attire was being guided by the school principal. Among them, Riley recognized Ethan Blackwood, looking every bit the powerful CEO in an expensive suit. Nothing like the homeless man who had accepted her father's shoes with trembling hands. As the group approached, Ethan noticed Riley. His confident stride faltered momentarily, genuine surprise registering on his face. "Mr. Blackwood is here for the STEM funding announcement," the principal was explaining to the group. "His foundation's donation will expand our robotics and engineering programs significantly." Riley ducked her head and quickly retreated in the opposite direction, not wanting to be seen. She slipped into the girls' bathroom, heart pounding with confusion. Was Mr. Blackwood truly kind? Or was he using her and her mother for some purpose she couldn't understand? Did he really care about them? Or were they just part of a project? Fulfilling a promise to his dead wife? The afternoon dragged on painfully. During the final period, an announcement came over the intercom. "All students and faculty are invited to the auditorium for a special presentation by Mr. Ethan Blackwood and the Blackwood Foundation." Riley followed her classmates, keeping her head down. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as students took their seats. On stage, Ethan stood beside the principal and several board members, looking comfortable in the spotlight. "At Blackwood Technologies, we believe in nurturing the innovators of tomorrow," Ethan was saying as Riley slipped into a seat at the back. "Which is why we're expanding our educational initiatives, beginning right here at Westbrook." His eyes scanned the audience, and for a brief moment they connected with Riley's. She looked away immediately, studying her shoes, new ones that had come with her Westbrook uniform. After the assembly, as students filed out, Riley deliberately avoided the stage where Ethan was speaking with teachers. She hurried to the pickup area, relieved to see her mother's car already waiting. "How was school?" Melissa asked as Riley climbed in. "Fine," Riley answered automatically, then hesitated. "Mom, why is Mr. Blackwood doing all this for us? Is it just because of Dad's shoes?" Melissa took a deep breath, carefully considering her response. "It's complicated, sweetie. I think the shoes were a catalyst. They reminded him of something important." "But does he actually care about us?" Riley persisted. "Or are we just charity?" The direct question caught Melissa off guard. She turned to look at her daughter, seeing the genuine distress in her eyes. "I don't have all the answers," Melissa admitted. "But I believe Mr. Blackwood's intentions are good, even if his methods are unusual." Riley gazed out the window at Westbrook's manicured campus, feeling the weight of adult complexities she was only beginning to understand. "I miss when things were simple," she whispered, almost to herself. "When I knew who the good guys were. You." "Need to talk to them," Charlotte insisted, placing a stack of quarterly reports on Ethan's desk. "And not in this sterile office. Somewhere real." Ethan looked up from his computer, surprised by his assistant's directness. "Excuse me?" "The Morgans," Charlotte clarified, unfazed by his tone. "Riley's been avoiding you at school events. Melissa keeps rescheduling meetings. And after that confrontation with Patricia last week," she shook her head. "They need to hear your story. All of it." "I explained my motivations to Melissa," Ethan countered, though he knew Charlotte was right. The distance had been growing, despite his efforts to respect their space. "You gave her the sanitized corporate version," Charlotte replied. "Invite them to your home for dinner. Not a restaurant where you can hide behind menus and waiters. Let them see Ethan, not Mr. Blackwood of Blackwood Technologies." That evening, Ethan made the call himself rather than delegating it to Charlotte. When Melissa answered, the surprise in her voice was evident. "I was wondering if you and Riley would join me for dinner," he said, pacing his office. "At my home, not a restaurant. There are things I'd like to explain properly." There was a long pause before Melissa responded. "I think that might be helpful. Riley has questions I can't answer." 2 days later, Melissa's car pulled up to the security gate of Ethan's Beacon Hill residence. Riley sat silently in the passenger seat, clutching a small notebook. Her observations journal, a habit she'd developed after her father's death. "This house is huge," she whispered, as they approached the elegant brownstone. "Do you think he gets lonely?" The question caught Melissa off guard. "I don't know, sweetie. Maybe we'll find out." Ethan himself opened the door, dressed more casually than they'd ever seen him. Dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that made him look younger. more approachable. "Thank you for coming," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "Please, come in." The interior was surprisingly modest for a billionaire's home. Tasteful but comfortable furnishings, walls lined with bookshelves and framed photographs rather than expensive artwork. Charlotte was arranging a vegetable platter in the kitchen. "I thought I'd help with dinner before heading out," she explained. "Ethan's a decent cook, but he gets distracted easily." The casual remark and Ethan's sheepish smile in response humanized him in a way Melissa hadn't expected. During dinner, conversation remained light. Riley's progress at school, Melissa's work at the hospital, neutral topics that built a foundation of normalcy. It wasn't until they moved to the living room for dessert that Ethan finally broached the subject they'd come to discuss. "I owe you both a fuller explanation," he began, settling into an armchair across from them, "about my experiments and why your kindness affected me so deeply." Riley, who had been quiet most of the evening, looked up attentively. "I grew up in foster care," Ethan revealed. "My parents died when I was 8. A car accident. No relatives stepped forward, so I bounced between homes until I aged out of the system." Melissa hadn't known this part of his history. It wasn't mentioned in any of the business profiles she'd researched. "I taught myself to code at public libraries," he continued. "Started Blackwood Technologies in a garage with scholarship money and student loans. When success came, it came fast. Suddenly everyone wanted something from me. Investors, partners, supposed friends." He paused, looking at a photograph on the side table. Jessica laughing on a beach, hair blowing in the wind. Jessica was different. She called me out on my cynicism from the day we met. She was a pediatric oncologist, completely unimpressed by my wealth or status. A small smile touched his lips. We had 5 wonderful years together before her diagnosis. Terminal from the start. Riley's small voice broke the silence that followed. "Did she like helping kids too?" "It was her life's mission," Ethan answered softly. "We planned a foundation together during her final months to support children with potential but limited resources, especially those from single-parent homes, like she had been." He leaned forward, his gaze direct. "After she died, I lost focus. The foundation became just papers in a drawer. My social experiments were my way of trying to see the world through her eyes, to find meaning again." "And then I gave you Dad's shoes," Riley said, understanding dawning on her young face. "Your father's shoes were probably the most precious thing you could have given," Ethan said gently. "Your last tangible connection to him. Yet you gave them to a complete stranger because everyone deserves warm feet." His voice caught slightly. It was the most genuine act of kindness I'd witnessed in years. Melissa watched her daughter's expression soften, the confusion of recent weeks giving way to understanding. "The scholarships, the foundation, they're not charity or a project," Ethan concluded. "They're a promise I made to Jessica. Your kindness simply reminded me it was time to keep it." The evening at Ethan's home had cleared the air considerably. Over the next 2 weeks, Riley's enthusiasm for school returned, and Melissa found herself more comfortable in her role at the hospital. The uncertainty that had clouded their new life began to lift. But Patricia Morgan wasn't finished. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Melissa returned home from work to find a certified letter waiting. Patricia had filed for temporary guardianship of Riley, citing undue influence from an unrelated adult male and questioning Melissa's judgment as a parent. "She can't do this," Melissa whispered, hands shaking as she read the court summons. "She can't take my daughter." She called her brother-in-law's former colleague, a family attorney, who reviewed the petition over the phone. "It's a weak case," he assured her, "but Patricia has resources and connections. You'll need proper representation." As Melissa hung up, calculating whether her savings could cover legal fees, the doorbell rang. Her heart sank, expecting more bad news. Instead, she found Riley escorted by a security officer from Westbrook. "Ms. Morgan, I'm Jim from campus security." Riley insisted on coming home early, said it was an emergency. Riley rushed inside, her face flushed with indignation. Aunt Patricia came to school. She was asking my teachers questions about Mr. Blackwood and taking pictures of the robotics lab. She said she was gathering evidence. Before Melissa could respond, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Patricia herself, accompanied by a stern-looking man in an expensive suit. "I see the school called you," Patricia said, pushing past Melissa into the apartment. "This is Harold Winters, my attorney. We're here to discuss the guardianship petition. You had no right to go to Riley's school," Melissa said, struggling to control her anger. "You're upsetting her with this crusade of yours." "Crusade?" Patricia scoffed. "I'm protecting my niece from your poor decisions. First, you accept ridiculous handouts from a billionaire who's clearly using you both to fulfill some psychological need. Then you uproot Riley from her school and neighborhood. I like my new school," Riley interrupted, stepping between the adults. "And Mr. Blackwood is nice. He's helping us because I helped him, not because he wants something back." Patricia's expression softened as she addressed Riley. "Sweetheart, you're too young to understand how the world works. Men like Blackwood don't talk to me like I'm a baby," Riley said, her voice trembling but determined. "I know what you're doing, and you're not doing it for Dad. You're doing it for you." The room fell silent at Riley's outburst. Patricia looked stunned while the attorney shifted uncomfortably. "Riley, maybe you should go to your room," Melissa suggested gently. "No," Riley insisted. "This is about me and I want to stay." The standoff was interrupted by another ring at the door. When Melissa opened it, Ethan stood there, Charlotte a few steps behind him. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said. "Charlotte received an alert about the incident at Westbrook. I wanted to make sure Riley was all right." Patricia's face reddened with anger. "Perfect timing. Here's the man himself rushing to the rescue. Tell me, Mr. Blackwood, what exactly do you want from my brother's family?" Ethan remained calm in the face of her hostility. "I understand your concern for Riley and Melissa. Family looking out for family is admirable." "Don't patronize me," Patricia snapped. "Thomas was barely cold in his grave when you swooped in with your money and influence. You weren't even speaking to us for months after Dad died," Riley pointed out. "You only started coming around when you found out about the scholarship." Patricia flinched as if struck. "That's not true. I was giving you space to grieve." "You were mad at Mom," Riley countered, surprising everyone with her perception. "Because Dad left everything to her instead of sharing with you. I heard you arguing at the funeral." Melissa placed a protective hand on Riley's shoulder, while Ethan remained by the door, respectfully not inserting himself further into the family conflict. "I think," he said carefully, "this is primarily a family matter. I didn't come to interfere, only to offer support if needed." He looked directly at Melissa. "My legal team is at your disposal, but the decision to accept that help is entirely yours." The sincerity in his voice seemed to penetrate even Patricia's anger. For the first time, she looked uncertain, glancing between Ethan and Riley. "You really believe in him, don't you?" she asked her niece quietly. Riley nodded. "He's not the bad guy here, Aunt Pat. And neither is Mom." In the heavy silence that followed, the power dynamics in the room subtly shifted. Patricia's righteous indignation began to crumble as she faced not just opposition, but the clear-eyed judgment of her 9-year-old niece. The family court building loomed imposingly as Melissa and Riley climbed the stone steps, hand in hand. Despite Patricia's wavering resolve during their confrontation, she had proceeded with the guardianship petition, forcing them to this moment. "Remember what Mr. Reynolds said?" Melissa murmured, referring to the experienced family attorney provided through Ethan's foundation. "Just answer truthfully. The judge wants what's best for you." Riley nodded, unusually solemn in her navy dress. At 9 years old, she looked impossibly small against the backdrop of the courthouse, yet her eyes held a determination that belied her age. Inside the courtroom, Patricia sat with her attorney, avoiding eye contact. Melissa was surprised to see how tired her sister-in-law looked, the weeks of conflict clearly taking their toll. Judge Eleanor Martinez, A veteran family court judge with silver-streaked hair and penetrating eyes called the hearing to order. Patricia's attorney presented first, painting Melissa as an opportunist using her daughter to secure favors from Ethan Blackwood. Ms. Morgan accepted housing, employment advancement, and educational benefits worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from a man who has taken a suspicious interest in her child, he argued. This creates an inappropriate dependency that puts Riley's welfare at risk. When it was their turn, Mr. Reynolds methodically dismantled these claims. He presented evidence of Patricia's minimal contact with Riley in the months following Thomas's death, contrasted with documentation of Melissa's consistent parenting, despite financial hardships. As for Mr. Blackwood's involvement, Reynolds continued, the scholarship program is administered through a foundation with a board of directors and strict oversight. Ms. Morgan's promotion was based on her exemplary work record and recommendations from multiple supervisors. The judge listened impassively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. As the attorneys finished, she looked directly at Riley. Young lady, I understand you'd like to address the court. That's unusual for someone your age, but given the circumstances, I'll allow it. Do you understand what's happening here today? Riley stood, smoothing her dress nervously. Yes, Your Honor. My aunt wants to take me away from my mom because she thinks Mr. Blackwood is using us for something bad. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the courtroom at her directness. Judge Martinez's expression softened slightly, and, what do you think about that? Riley took a deep breath. I think Aunt Patricia doesn't understand what really happened. See, I saw the same homeless man under the Washington Avenue Bridge for 3 whole days. He looked cold, and his shoes were all torn up. The judge leaned forward, clearly intrigued by this unexpected testimony. I decided to give him my dad's work boots, Riley continued. They were special to me, but Dad always said to help people when you can. I didn't know the man was really Mr. Blackwood doing an experiment. She glanced at Patricia before continuing. Mr. Blackwood told us he promised his wife before she died that he'd help kids who didn't have a lot of opportunities. My kindness reminded him of that promise. Riley's voice grew stronger. Grown-ups can be lonely too, even when they have lots of money. I think Mr. Blackwood needs us as much as we need him. Not in a bad way, but in a friends helping friends way. The courtroom had fallen completely silent, captivated by the wisdom coming from such a young speaker. And what about your aunt? Judge Martinez asked gently. Do you think she wants what's best for you? Riley hesitated, showing a maturity in her careful consideration. I think Aunt Patricia misses Dad and is afraid of losing more family, but taking me from Mom won't fix that. She turned to face her aunt directly. Aunt Pat, Dad always said family should help, not hurt. If you really want to honor him, this isn't the way. Patricia's composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes. As she looked away, Judge Martinez studied Riley for a moment longer, then addressed the courtroom. I've heard enough to make my determination. This court finds no evidence of inappropriate influence or parental neglect. The petition for temporary guardianship is denied. Full custody remains with Melissa Morgan. She removed her glasses, adding, more personally, Ms. Morgan, you've raised a remarkably insightful daughter. Mr. Blackwood's foundation appears to be exactly what it claims, a legitimate educational initiative. And Ms. Patricia Morgan, I would encourage you to find healthier ways to remain connected to your brother's family. As they left the courtroom, Melissa wrapped her arm around Riley's shoulders. I'm so proud of you, sweetie. So proud. Riley smiled, relief washing over her face. Do you think Aunt Patricia will be okay? Melissa glanced back at her sister-in-law, who sat alone in the emptying courtroom, shoulders slumped in defeat. I hope so, Riley. I really hope so. In the weeks following the court hearing, Ethan maintained a respectful distance from the Morgans. Though Charlotte kept him updated on Riley's progress at school and Melissa's work at the hospital, he made no direct contact, concerned that his presence might cause further complications. Riley noticed his absence keenly. One afternoon, as she worked on her science project in the Westbrook laboratory, she made a decision. Mr. Chen, She approached her science teacher after class. "Is it okay if I invite someone special to the science fair next week?" "Of course," he replied. "Parents and family are always welcome." "It's not family," Riley clarified. "It's Mr. Blackwood. He helped me get into Westbrook, and I think he'd like to see my project." Mr. Chen looked surprised but nodded. "I'm sure. He'd be honored, Riley. Would you like me to help you contact him?" Riley shook her head, a determined glint in her eye. "No, thank you. I need to do this myself." That evening, Riley waited until her mother was preparing dinner before slipping into the living room with her tablet. She had never used Ethan's direct contact information, but it had been included in her scholarship welcome package for emergencies. After several attempts at drafting a message, she settled on simplicity. "Dear Mr. Blackwood, I'm presenting my science project next Thursday at 4 p.m. It's about the cycle of kindness and how one good deed can start a chain reaction. I thought you might want to see it since you're part of the experiment. Sincerely, Riley Morgan." She hit send before she could change her mind, then returned to help her mother with dinner, not mentioning what she'd done. The science fair arrived, with the Westbrook Gymnasium transformed into a showcase of student projects. Riley stood nervously by her display. A carefully constructed model demonstrating how kindness creates a ripple effect through communities, complete with interactive elements and real-world examples. Melissa arrived first, rushing in after her shift. "Sorry I'm late, sweetie. Traffic was terrible." She hugged Riley, then admired the project. "This looks amazing." Riley kept glancing toward the entrance, anxiety growing as the fair proceeded with no sign of Ethan. "Are you expecting someone else?" Melissa asked, noticing her daughter's distraction. Before Riley could answer, a murmur spread through the gymnasium as Ethan Blackwood entered. Unlike his previous visits to the school, he wasn't surrounded by an entourage or dressed in formal, business attire. Instead, he approached alone, wearing a simple blazer over jeans, looking more like an ordinary parent than a billionaire CEO. Melissa's eyes widened in surprise. "Riley, did you invite Mr. Blackwood?" Riley nodded, suddenly nervous. "I wanted him to see my project. Is that okay?" Before Melissa could respond, Ethan reached their display. "Hello, Riley. Thank you for the invitation." He nodded respectfully to Melissa. "I hope my presence isn't an intrusion." "Not at all," Melissa assured him, though her initial surprise was evident. "Riley didn't mention she'd invited you." "I wasn't sure you'd come," Riley admitted. "I wouldn't have missed it," Ethan replied simply. With growing confidence, Riley began explaining her project. "It's called the cycle of kindness. See, it starts with one person doing something nice without expecting anything back." She pointed to a section featuring a pair of shoes. "That creates positive feelings in the receiver, who's more likely to help someone else." She demonstrated with small mechanical figures that moved through various scenarios when buttons were pressed. Each kind act creates reactions that spread outward, affecting more and more people. Ethan listened intently, genuinely impressed by the sophistication of her concept. "This is remarkable work, Riley. What inspired it?" "You did," she answered, honestly, "and my dad, and my mom. I realized that kindness isn't just about the person receiving help, it's also about what happens to the giver." Other parents and students gathered around, drawn by Riley's enthusiastic presentation. Mr. Chen approached, beaming with pride. "Riley's project is being considered for the regional science competition," he informed them. Her concept of quantifying the social impact of altruistic behavior is quite advanced for her age. As the fair continued, the initial awkwardness between Melissa and Ethan gradually eased. They found themselves sharing in Riley's excitement, exchanging observations about her project and applauding when she received an excellence award at the end of the evening. Walking to the parking lot afterward, Riley skipped ahead, clutching her award certificate. "Thank you for coming," Melissa said quietly to Ethan. It meant a lot to her. "Thank you for allowing it," he replied. "I've been keeping my distance because I didn't want to complicate things after the court case." Riley turned back, waiting for them to catch up. "Mom, can Mr. Black would come for dinner sometimes. I think he gets too lonely in his big house. The direct question caught both adults off guard. Melissa looked at Ethan, seeing not the powerful businessman or mysterious benefactor, but simply a man who, like her, had experienced profound loss and was finding his way forward. I think that could be arranged, she answered softly, watching as her daughter's face lit up with a smile that reminded her so much of Thomas. A hesitant knock on the door interrupted. Sunday breakfast. Melissa and Riley exchanged puzzled glances. They weren't expecting visitors. When Melissa opened the door, she was startled to find Patricia standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Gone was the polished, confrontational woman from the courthouse. Instead, her sister-in-law appeared tired, humbled, and clutching a worn leather photo album. Patricia, Melissa said, unable to hide her surprise. What are you doing here? I was hoping we could talk, Patricia replied quietly. If that's okay. After a moment's hesitation, Melissa stepped aside. Come in. We're just finishing breakfast. Riley looked up from her pancakes, her fork freezing midway to her mouth when she spotted her aunt. Aunt Pat? Hello, Riley, Patricia said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You look well. An awkward silence descended as Patricia took a seat at the kitchen table. Finally, she placed the photo album in the center. I found this while cleaning out some of Thomas's things I had stored, she explained. It has photos from when he was younger, I thought. I thought Riley might want to have it. Melissa's expression softened slightly as she recognized the album. I wondered where this had gone. Thomas loved these pictures. Patricia nodded, her composure beginning to crack. I took it after the funeral. I shouldn't have, but I was angry and hurt and... She paused, gathering herself. The things Riley said in court, about me not really honoring Thomas, they've been haunting me. Riley cautiously reached for the album, opening it to reveal photographs of a younger Thomas, playing baseball, graduating high school, laughing with Patricia at what appeared to be a family barbecue. The truth is, Patricia continued, her voice strained, I was always jealous of what Thomas had with you, Melissa. He found something with you that I never managed to find in my own life. When he died, it felt like I lost my last chance at real family. Melissa sat down across from her sister-in-law. Thomas always said you were the strong one in the family. He admired you tremendously. He said that? Patricia looked genuinely surprised. All the time, Melissa confirmed. He said you blazed the trail that made it possible for him to succeed. Tears welled in Patricia's eyes. I've made such a mess of things, the lawsuit, the accusations. I convinced myself I was protecting Riley, but I was really just afraid of losing my connection to her, to Thomas's child. She looked directly at Riley. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Your dad would be so disappointed in how I've behaved. Riley studied her aunt thoughtfully before responding. Dad always said everyone deserves a second chance if they're really sorry. Patricia smiled through her tears. He would say that, wouldn't he? As they looked through the album together, Patricia shared stories about Thomas that neither Melissa nor Riley had heard before. His disastrous first driving lesson, the summer he decided to become a vegetarian but couldn't resist their grandmother's meatballs, the time he stood up to a neighborhood bully who was twice his size. I'd like to be part of your lives again, Patricia said as they reached the end of the album. Properly this time. Not interfering or judging, just family. Melissa considered this, remembering all the pain Patricia had caused. Yet she also remembered how Thomas had always emphasized the importance of forgiveness. We could start with Sunday dinners, she suggested. Once a month, maybe. Across town at Blackwood Technologies headquarters, Ethan faced a different kind of confrontation. The quarterly board meeting had turned contentious when several members questioned his excessive personal involvement in the scholarship program. The foundation is consuming disproportionate resources, argued Walter Bennett, the longest-serving board member. Both financial and, more concerning your attention, Ethan. We have acquisition opportunities in Singapore that need your focus. Ethan remained calm, letting the criticism wash over him. A few months ago, such challenges would have induced him to retreat behind corporate protocol and financial justifications. Today, he thought of Riley's science project, the cycle of kindness, and found clarity. The true value of Blackwood Technologies, he began, his voice steady, has never been measured solely by our market capitalization. From the beginning, I've maintained that our success should create meaningful impact. He pulled up slides showing the early results of the scholarship program, not just Riley's achievements but the progress of the dozen other students who had been enrolled in the second wave. A 9-year-old girl understood what many of us in this room have forgotten, Ethan continued. Our greatest wealth is measured by how we affect the lives of others. The foundation isn't a distraction from our core business, it's the purpose that gives that business meaning. Walter leaned back, studying Ethan with new interest. You've changed, Ethan. Since Jessica's passing, we've all been concerned about your disconnection. Whatever this program is doing for these children, it seems to be doing something for you as well. Ethan nodded, acknowledging the truth in those words. It's reminded me why we built this company in the first place, and for that alone, it's worth every penny. 6 months later, a modest crowd gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Shoes of Hope Foundation. The renovated brownstone in downtown Boston would serve as headquarters for the expanded scholarship program, now serving 50 families from across the city. Riley, standing between her mother and Ethan, couldn't stop grinning as reporters took photographs. She had grown an inch taller and gained immeasurable confidence in the past year. Now 10 years old, she wore her special occasion dress, navy blue with a Peter Pan collar that her mother had carefully ironed that morning. Are you ready? Ethan asked, handing her the ceremonial scissors. Riley nodded, stepping forward to address the small gathering. The Shoes of Hope Foundation isn't just about scholarships, she explained, her voice clear and steady. It's about seeing people who might otherwise be invisible. She gestured to the foundation's logo displayed above the entrance, a simple pair of stylized work boots. These shoes represent steps toward a better future, not just for kids like me, but for anyone who needs a hand up, not a handout. As Riley cut the ribbon, applause erupted from the crowd. Melissa watched proudly from the sidelines, standing next to Charlotte, who had become a friend over the past months. She's remarkable, Charlotte observed. I've never seen Ethan so invested in anything since Jessica died. Melissa nodded, watching as Ethan stayed deliberately in the background, allowing Riley to be the center of attention. They've been good for each other. Inside, the foundation's mission was displayed prominently, recognizing potential, fostering kindness, creating opportunity. The main program, providing educational scholarships to children from single-parent households, had been supplemented by a mentorship initiative and parent career development resources. Melissa, now executive director of the foundation, led tours of the facility. Her nursing expertise had been invaluable in developing health and wellness components of the program, ensuring participating families received comprehensive support. Patricia had found her place as well, volunteering her organizational skills to coordinate the foundation's events. Her relationship with Melissa and Riley had slowly healed, transforming into a genuine bond rather than the strained connection that had existed after Thomas's death. Among the foundation's innovative programs was one called 3 Days, inspired by Riley's observation of the disguised Ethan. Volunteers would spend 3 days in various communities, identifying needs that might otherwise go unnoticed. The most important lesson we teach, Melissa explained to visitors, is the one my daughter taught me. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes. As the day wound down, Riley found Ethan sitting alone in the small garden, behind the building. Why aren't you inside celebrating? She asked, settling onto the bench beside him. I wanted a moment to think, he replied. Your mother has done an amazing job bringing everything together. Riley studied him with her perceptive gaze. You're not sad, are you? Ethan smiled. Not sad. Grateful. Jessica would have loved all of this, especially you. I think my dad would have liked you too, Riley said simply, once he got past the whole billionaire thing. Their laughter echoed in the quiet garden as inside, the foundation that had started with a pair of work boots began its journey. 1 year to the day since Riley had given Thomas's boots to the stranger under the Washington Avenue underpass. Friends and family gathered to celebrate her 10th birthday. The party was held in the garden of the Shoes of Hope Foundation, now flourishing with early summer blooms. Unlike the lavish celebrations some of her Westbrook classmates enjoyed, Riley had requested something simple and meaningful. The guests included Melissa, Ethan, Patricia, Charlotte, Riley's friends from school, and several children who had received foundation scholarships. A table adorned with wildflowers held a cake decorated with small sugar shoes, a special touch arranged by Patricia, who had discovered a talent for baking during her journey of redemption. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Melissa said as Riley prepared to blow out her candles. Riley closed her eyes momentarily, then extinguished all 10 flames with one determined breath. The small crowd applauded, and Ethan quietly captured the moment on camera. Not as a CEO documenting a foundation event, but as a friend preserving a precious memory. Later, as the children played a spirited game of tag through the garden, Melissa found herself standing between Ethan and Patricia, watching Riley dart between flowering bushes, her laughter blending with that of her friends. "I never imagined this would be our life a year ago," Melissa admitted, "when I was taking doubles at the hospital and barely keeping us afloat." Patricia squeezed her hand. "Thomas would be so proud of both of you, especially Riley. She has his heart and your strength. And her own remarkable wisdom," Ethan added. "I've learned more from her than from any business mentor I've ever had." The conversation paused as Riley approached, slightly out of breath from playing. "Mom, can I show everybody the special room, please?" Melissa nodded. "Of course, it's your birthday." Riley led the guests through the foundation building to a gallery near the entrance. Inside a glass display case, carefully preserved and respectfully presented, sat the original work boots she had given to Ethan, Thomas's boots, now a symbol of the foundation's origin. "My dad used to say we should try to walk in other people's shoes to understand them better," Riley explained to her friends and the scholarship recipients. "I think that's what we've all been learning to do." She turned to Ethan. "Mr. Blackwood tried to understand what it's like to have nothing." Then to her mother, "Mom showed me what it means to be brave even when you're scared." Finally to Patricia, "And Aunt Pat learned that family isn't about controlling, it's about supporting each other." The adults exchanged surprised glances, once again taken aback by Riley's perception. "I think," Riley continued, "we all have different shoes to fill, but we don't have to do it alone." That evening, after the guests had departed and the foundation staff had cleaned up, Riley sat on the garden bench between her mother and Ethan. The three of them had developed a comfortable familiarity over the past year, not quite a traditional family, but a circle of connection that had healed each of them in different ways. "Did you get everything you wanted for your birthday?" Melissa asked, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Riley nodded contentedly. "Almost everything." "Almost?" Ethan inquired. Riley looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky. "I just wish Dad could see everything that happened because of his shoes. Do you think he knows?" Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "I believe he does, sweetheart." Ethan, who rarely spoke of spiritual matters, added quietly, "Perhaps he and Jessica are somehow watching this unfold together." Riley seemed satisfied with this thought. She leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, a gesture both childlike and profound. In the main gallery of the foundation, the spotlight remained on Thomas's boots throughout the night. A reminder that the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples that extended far beyond what anyone might imagine, connecting people who never expected to find family in one another. From a simple pair of shoes had grown something extraordinary, not just a foundation with programs and scholarships, but a web of human connections that had transformed everyone. It touched a legacy more meaningful than any memorial of stone or bronze could ever be. As Riley drifted toward sleep that night, she whispered, "Happy birthday to me, and thank you, Dad, for teaching me about shoes." The end.